might have heard of Carvana and that we sell cars online. What you probably didn't know is that we're in the business of making you happy and that your new car ought to come with newfound happiness and zero surprises.
At first, I thought it was the most enjoyable car buying experience that I had.
But 7 months after he bought it, a repo truck showed up in his driveway. Police reports show the car had been stolen in Memphis 7 months before Dennis bought it.
What a lovely day outside to film. It's so warm out, as you can see. I couldn't have possibly picked a warmer day to come film this video. Behind me, you can see Carvana, and that company is in free fall at this point, along with their stock, because their stock has dropped from around $250 a share to around $8 a day. That's a 97% decrease. So you know what they did with that? They fired another 1,500 people just a few weeks ago, which is roughly 8% of their workforce.
Unfortunately, the market has changed.
And now we have to fire a bunch of people. Same thing, again, second time in a year. In the CEO email, to those impacted, I am sorry. As you all know, we made a similar decision to this one in May. It is fair to ask why this is happening again, and yet I am not sure I can answer it as clearly as you deserve. It's funny because I'm not even the CEO of your company, and I can answer that question way clearer than you, Ernie. The first one, Carvana took on additional debt this year. Q1, the company's long-term debt was $3.28 billion. But by the end of 2022, they have $6.6 billion. So they've added $3.3 billion in additional debt to their company. Both private and public data show that the price of a used car is decelerating faster over time now. And the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates to keep inflation under control, or attempt to keep inflation under control. What that means for you when you're buying a used car, your interest rate's gonna be 9%, maybe even 25% at this point. In fact, inventory for used cars was extremely low, forcing prices to be extremely high. So things aren't going good for their company. Now, the 1,500 people that were just fired a couple weeks ago did get a few benefits, and this is in the layoff letter. So they get extended healthcare coverage for 3 months, support and resources, including resume review, LinkedIn help, whatever that means, and tips to identify your next step in your career. Thanks, company that just fired me. And then last but not least, he says you get priority consideration once we begin hiring again. That's right.
We'll consider you first. We won't hire you first, but we'll consider you first.
I don't know, pretty laughable. Now, beyond Carvana stock completely falling through the floor, there are a multitude of other reasons that Carvana could possibly be going under. One is happening right now. There's actually a class action lawsuit where people are claiming they never received their registration, or they didn't receive their registration on time, or they never received their title.
The lawsuit claims Carvana failed to timely register cars as it promised, sometimes for a period exceeding 2 years. The lawsuit goes on to say the issue causes consumers to be questioned and sometimes arrested by law enforcement.
We filed 2 class actions against Carvana for their failure to deliver permanent registration to the consumers who purchased them.
I think the class action lawsuit's still ongoing, and if you've experienced some BS dealing with Carvana, then go sign up for it. Here's another reason. Apparently, they sold a stolen vehicle to someone. Rental car that was stolen, taken to California, retitled, put on Carvana, sold to someone in Denver, Colorado, and when he got the car, a tow truck showed up and took it away. He was like, what's going on? They're like, oh, this car's actually stolen.
At first, I thought it was the most enjoyable car buying experience that I had.
But 7 months after he bought it, a repo truck showed up in his driveway. Police reports show the car had been stolen in Memphis 7 months before Dennis bought it.
It was at the airport in Memphis, and it was stolen in Memphis. So there's multiple open titles on this car.
After Dennis got the car back, he found out Carvana not only sold him a stolen car.
No, this thing's a death trap.
The car had prior damage he says happened before Carvana sold it. This vehicle condition report details wrinkled sheet metal, missing bolts, and a clearly bent radiator, stating the car is a total loss with previous crash damage that has been poorly repaired. Carvana promises a 150-point inspection, but we found Carvana has faced fines and license suspensions in several states. The Better Business Bureau has thousands of complaints.
So funny enough, the car this man purchased, the ad for it is still up. So this is the stolen vehicle that man purchased. This is the original ad, and if I refresh the page, it should say that the vehicle has been sold. So if we scroll down to the vehicle details here, they brag about their 150-point inspection so that you can feel good about the quality of your car. Right here it says the Carfax has a clean history, but according to the inspection, this car was wrecked and just not reported.
No, this thing's a death trap.
And the fact that they still have the ad up for their old stolen vehicle that they sold to someone is hilarious.
On top of all of that, the reviews for Carvana are horrendous. The one behind me, I'm looking at Google reviews right now. There's one that says, my wife bought a car from Carvana over a year ago and they originally delivered the wrong car. Then they messed up the finances, and a year later we have still not received the vehicle's registration, which is against the law. There was another customer who purchased a vehicle from Carvana and they could not get their tags.
Piper can't drive the car because his temporary tags expired 5 months ago in December, and he still hasn't received his registration.
I get pulled over for not having my inspection stickers. I got 2 tickets.
He says Carvana told him it would reimburse him for the tickets, which it did do 2 months later. But while he was waiting for that money, he learned a bench warrant had been issued for his arrest.
So I had to pay them out of pocket.
In April, he got pulled over again for no registration. Adding insult to injury, listen to what Piper says is Carvana's latest solution for him.
Carvana told me that if I pay out of pocket for a rental car, they will reimburse me.
But wait, there's even more lawsuits against Carvana. Let's look at the state of California. Carvana was selling cars since 2015 in the state of California without a dealer's license until May of 2019. In 2017, they started delivering cars to California customers without a transportation license. Also, between May 20th and June 30th, 2019, Carvana sold a bunch of vehicles and did not provide any inspection reports to its customers prior to sale as required by California law. They did not admit to any wrongdoing. They just agreed to settle the case for $850,000. $600,000 in civil penalties, $200,000 in investigative costs, $50,000 in restitution to be distributed to a non-profit charitable organization that supports public interest. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand how this one works. That seems a little bit sus to me. Now let's look at Pennsylvania, because the Department of Banking and Securities and the Compliance Office says that it found Carvana failed to operate within the state's Consumer Credit Code. The state of Pennsylvania is basically saying that Carvana entered into installment sale contracts with Pennsylvania consumers while not licensed as an installment seller in Pennsylvania from January 2014 to present, whenever this docket was created. 2018, June 26th. Next up, let's look at the state of Florida, because Florida law requires that dealers turn over title and registration to the buyers within 30 days. So the state filed an administrative complaint against Carvana and Carvana's CEO, specifically Ernest C. Garcia III, for failing to transfer titles within 30 days as required by Florida law. But wait, the list goes on. Now let's look at the state of North Carolina, which also had similar issues of them not getting their registration and titles to their buyers in time. But not only that, they had a bigger one. They issued out-of-state temporary license plates for North Carolina customers. That's a pretty big no-no. And they even tried to sell a vehicle without getting a state inspection on it. So the state filed an administrative decision against them. This is the legal mumbo-jumbo. The petitioner is Carvana. The respondent is the state of North Carolina. So they committed 2 Type 1 violations and 1 Type 2 violation. The first Type 1 violation was Carvana's failure to timely deliver the title work to the DMV as required by code. The second Type 1 violation was for an unfair method of competition or unfair deceptive act or practice for issuing an out-of-state temporary tags plates for a vehicle sold to a North Carolina resident. And the 1 Type 2 violation was offering a motor vehicle for sale without a North Carolina state inspection as required by law. Based on these violations, Carvana had to pay, get this, a whopping $500 civil penalty and a $200 administrative hearing fee. Yeah, so, I mean, you can get why Carvana does this. If all they have to pay is $700 in fees, then they can just keep breaking the law and make way more money and then just pay the penalty. The next state we have to look at for Carvana was the state of Illinois. They suspended Carvana's license to operate in the state after investigating consumer complaints. And it was the same sort of complaints as North Carolina and all the other states: out-of-state registration, failure to get registration and title on time or even at all. On May 10th of 2022, this year, the state of Illinois banned Carvana from selling cars in the state. 16 days later, that ban was lifted on May 26, 2022. But then July 18th rolls around and they reinstate the ban. According to the Secretary of State, Carvana breached the guidelines put in place when the original ban was lifted. This is what Carvana instantly started doing again after they were banned from selling cars. Once again, they started issuing temporary license plates of another state to Illinois residents. They started issuing temporary license plates without going through a licensed remitter as required by the stay agreement, and failing to process title and registration paperwork through the Secretary of State upon sale of a vehicle to Illinois customers as required by law. Now, Illinois did lift the ban again, but not before Carvana Vice President Paul Bro was charged with 27 counts of failure to transfer vehicle titles with 50 counts of improper use of titling and registration. That's right, the Carvana Vice President was charged. Finally, we have the state of Michigan said that Carvana's license was suspended for multiple violations of Michigan Vehicle Code. Failure to make an application for title and registration within 15 days of delivery, failing to maintain odometer records, that's a pretty big one, improperly issuing temporary registrations, and failing to have records available for inspection, among other violations. So after that, Carvana went on probation with the state of Michigan for 18 months, with an agreement to pay $2,500 for an administrative fine. They admitted to several violations of code, according to a media release, and one of the stipulations of the probation agreement was that all dealership employees who handled paperwork had to go to the department's dealer training program. So not long after Michigan puts Carvana on probation, Michigan regulators continue to receive reports of missing titles. So this sparks an even broader investigation into Carvana from the state of Michigan, where the state found that Carvana broke its probation. Is anyone surprised here? So Carvana admitted to breaking Michigan state laws again, and they paid another fine. And then they got another 6 months of probation. And then, is anyone surprised yet? Carvana broke their probation again. This is what the state of Michigan had to say about how often Carvana broke their probation and agreements. They failed to make application for title and registration within 15 days of delivery for 112 customers since agreeing to an earlier probation. So this happened during the probation period. Now, this is a pretty huge one. I don't know how Carvana is still in business after this, but committing fraud in connection with selling or otherwise dealing in vehicles where Carvana employees admitted to destroying title applications and all applicable documents pertaining to the sale of 3 vehicles that were sold to customers, and Carvana took the vehicles back. Failing to maintain odometer records, improperly issuing temporary registrations, failing to have records available for inspection during reasonable or established business hours, possessing improper odometer disclosure records on which the odometer disclosure had been signed on behalf of the car buyer. So that means they're pushing the paper in front of you saying, yep, is that correct? And it's not correct, and you still sign it. And violating the terms of the probation agreement 127 times. But you can see why Carvana does it, right? If all you got to do is pay a little fine and you can keep breaking the law and make way more money than the fine is, well, then you just do that, right? And it looks like that's what Carvana did. Now, if you're a resident of the state of Michigan and you go to Carvana's website, this is what you get. Michigan, we need your support, because what happened after they violated the probation agreement 127 times is that they are no longer allowed to sell cars from their vending machine. They can still sell cars in the state of Michigan, but they just have to do it online. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I thought it was funny that Carvana is convinced it's the market that is causing all of its issues as a company and for its stock to go down and so on and so forth. But when you start looking into how they do business, and when you start looking into all the different lawsuits they have against them, the class action, the multiple class action lawsuits they have against them, the lawsuits they had where they admitted no wrongdoing but paid almost $1 million to the state of California, I don't know. I think it's funny when the fine is less than the amount of money that you're going to make, might as well just make the money. You can see how sleazy corporations can be sometimes, and this is just another example of that. So if you can appreciate me exposing that, maybe click that like button, maybe click that subscribe button, and if you have any ideas you want me to take a look at, go ahead and send them to me. You can email me, grindreel@gmail.com, Discord, Instagram, however you want to do it. Having said that, I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you in the next one.